My girlfriend of 8 years cheated with my best friend the night before his wedding, but when I found out the entire group knew, I exposed them all at the altar and destroyed their lives forever. I'm 31 years old. I manage my father's office supplies company, and I need to tell this story because what happened 6 months ago basically destroyed my entire social life and my 8 year relationship. But the truth is, I don't regret anything I did afterward. I guess I should start from the beginning, when I met Alexis in college, you know? We were a super tight-knit group from sophomore year, like those friends you see in movies where everyone gets along and does everything together. And Brandon was my roommate. I mean, my best friend, the guy I shared absolutely everything with. Alexis and I started dating like in junior year, and everything was perfect. You know, we had future plans. We talked about getting married someday, having kids, all that stuff people do when they're in love and young and stupid. The first few years after we graduated were good, honestly. The group stayed together even though we all still lived in the same college town. We'd go out on weekends, have barbecues in the summer, all that young adult stuff where you try to keep college nostalgia alive. I had gone back home to help my dad with the family business, basically an office supplies distributor that's been in the market for like 50 years. Nothing glamorous, but it pays well and it's stable. Alexis worked in human resources for a medium-sized company. Brandon was in pharmaceutical sales, making tons of money, and the rest of the group had decent jobs too. Eric was in tech sales. Rebecca had a food blog that was starting to take off. Christina worked in marketing. You know, everyone apparently being functional and successful adults. Around the 7th year of our relationship, I started talking more seriously about getting married. It made sense, right? We'd been together almost 8 years. We'd been living together for 3. We had an established life, and I was ready to take the next step. But every time I brought up the topic, Alexis kind of avoided it, saying things like, it wasn't the right time. That she wanted to wait until her career was more stable, that we were still young and there was no rush. At first, I didn't worry too much. Like, I understand that marriage is scary and everyone has their own timeline, but after months of hearing the same excuses, I started to feel like something didn't add up. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. All the signs were there, but I was too stupid or too trusting to notice them. Then Brandon announces he's getting married. This was like a year and a half ago, and we were all shocked because literally nobody knew he was seriously dating anyone. Turns out he'd met Grace about 6 months before, a girl from a super wealthy family who worked in I don't know what finance thing, and according to him, it was love at first sight and all that corny shit. He asked me to be his best man, obviously, because we'd been best friends since college and had been roommates for 3 years, and I said yes because that's what you do when your best friend gets married, right? The rest of the group was also invited. It was basically a reunion of our whole college crew, plus Grace's family and some of Brandon's coworkers. The months before the wedding were weird, now that I think about it. Alexis started acting different, more distant. She'd go out more often with the girls from the group. She'd come home late some nights saying she'd been with Rebecca or Christina. I was busy with the business and with best man responsibilities, helping Brandon with wedding plans and all that stuff, so I didn't pay much attention. There were 1 or 2 times I tried to talk to her about us, about our future, and she'd get defensive or change the subject. And I thought, well, maybe she's stressed about work or just not ready for commitment, and I'd let it go because I didn't want to pressure her. The week before the wedding was total chaos. Like any wedding, I guess. We had Brandon's bachelor party one weekend at a casino, like 2 hours away, and Alexis went to Grace's bachelorette party with the other girls from the group. Everything seemed normal. Brandon was happy and nervous like a guy getting married should be. We talked about how his life was going to change and all that, and he thanked me for being his best friend and being there for him. And I felt good, you know? Like we were basically brothers and I was proud to be by his side at that important moment. The day before the wedding, we all stayed at the same hotel where the ceremony and reception were going to be. One of those expensive places with pretty gardens that Grace's family had basically rented out completely. I arrived early to help with the final preparations. Alexis was going to arrive later because she had to work a half day. The afternoon before the wedding, there was a ceremony, rehearsal, and then a rehearsal dinner for close family and the wedding party. All very formal and elegant. Grace's family was the type of people who do things with style, you know? Alexis finally arrived around 6 in the evening. She looked tired, but pretty. She was wearing a blue dress that looked amazing on her, and we sat together at dinner, although she was checking her phone like every 5 minutes, which was weird, but I assumed it was work. After dinner around 9 at night, people started dispersing. Some went to their rooms, others to the hotel bar, and I decided to go for a walk because I'd eaten too much and needed fresh air. The hotel had a big parking lot with several sections, and I was walking around smoking a cigarette, something I only do when I drink. I'm not a regular smoker. When I saw Brandon's car in a corner of the parking lot, a black BMW he'd bought like 6 months before. I didn't think anything weird at first. Maybe I thought Brandon was in there talking on the phone or something. But then I saw there was someone else in the car, and I got a little closer without thinking much. Just out of curiosity or instinct, or I don't know what. And there they were, Brandon and Alexis, kissing. In the damn car. The night before his wedding. I felt like someone had kicked me in the stomach. I literally couldn't breathe. I stood there like an idiot trying to process what I was seeing, thinking maybe I was drunk or it was someone else who looked like Alexis. But no, it was her, in her blue dress, kissing my best friend, my roommate, the guy I'd lived with for 3 years and with whom I'd shared everything. I stood there, maybe 30 seconds that felt like an eternity, and then they separated and started talking. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but they looked comfortable, relaxed. Like this wasn't the first time this had happened. I don't know how, but I managed to walk back to the hotel without them seeing me. I was shaking. My hands were trembling so much that I dropped the cigarette and had to pick it up off the ground, and I felt like I was going to throw up or pass out or both. I went straight to the hotel bar and ordered a double whiskey, and then another, trying to calm down and think about what to do. Do I confront them now? Do I wait until after the wedding? Do I tell Grace? Do I leave the hotel and let them deal with their shit? 1,000 thoughts were going through my head, and none of them made sense. I just knew that everything I believed about my life was a lie, that my girlfriend of 8 years had been cheating on me with my best friend, and that tomorrow I was supposed to stand next to him at the altar as his best man while he married someone else. I was at the bar for like half an hour when Eric, Rebecca, and Christina arrived, part of our college friend group. They sat with me and started talking about tomorrow's wedding, about how beautiful everything was, about how crazy it was that Brandon was the first one in the group to get married. All those casual things people say when they're a little drunk and happy. Eric made a comment that froze my blood. He said something like, "Well, at least Brandon got to have his proper bachelor party last night, if you know what I mean." And he laughed, looking at Rebecca and Christina. And they laughed too. I asked what he meant by that, trying to sound casual, and Eric said, "Oh, come on, Matthew, don't play dumb. We all know Brandon and Alexis have their thing." And then he stopped suddenly as if he'd realized he'd said something he shouldn't have. That's when it all clicked. It wasn't just Brandon and Alexis. It was the whole damn group. Everyone knew. They'd all been laughing at me behind my back while my girlfriend was sleeping with my best friend. Rebecca tried to fix it, saying Eric was drunk and didn't know what he was saying. But I saw their faces, the guilt, the panic, and I knew it was true. I asked them how long they'd known, and nobody wanted to answer, until Christina finally said like a year, maybe a little more, that everyone in the group knew, except me and Grace. And they thought it was better not to tell me anything because they didn't want to cause drama. I don't remember how I got there. I just remember closing the door and sitting on the edge of the bed, trying not to have a panic attack. Alexis started knocking on the door around 11 at night, saying we needed to talk, that things weren't how I thought. All that typical shit people say when they get caught doing something horrible. I didn't open the door. I just told her to leave me alone, and eventually she left. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just sat there in the dark thinking about all the times Brandon and I had talked about our lives, about our relationships, about the future, and he was sleeping with my girlfriend the whole time. I thought about all the times Alexis had told me she loved me, that I was the love of her life, that someday we'd get married, and it was all a lie while she was with him. Around 6 in, the morning I made a decision. I wasn't going to stay quiet. I wasn't going to let Brandon marry Grace while cheating on everyone. I wasn't going to be the idiot who leaves silently while everyone continues with their happy lives. If they were going to destroy my life, I was going to make sure they paid for it. I showered, put on the best man suit, and prepared for the ceremony as if nothing had happened. I had breakfast alone in my room, avoided everyone, and at 11 in the morning when the ceremony started, I was standing there next to Brandon at the altar, smiling and acting like the perfect best friend. The ceremony started. Grace looked beautiful in her wedding dress that probably cost more than my car. Her father walked her down the aisle. Everyone was happy and excited, and I was there with the ring in my pocket waiting for the right moment. The officiant did all the typical introduction about marriage and love and commitment, and then came to the part where he says, "If anyone knows any reason why these two people should not be married, speak now or forever hold your peace." Normally nobody says anything at that part, it's just a formality, but I raised my hand. The whole place went silent. The officiant looked at me confused. Brandon looked at me with panic in his eyes. Grace looked at me not understanding what was happening. I cleared my throat and said, "Yes, I have a reason. Brandon is having an affair with my girlfriend Alexis for over a year, and I know because last night I saw them kissing in his car in the parking lot." You can imagine the chaos that followed. Grace started screaming. Grace's mother fainted or pretended to faint. Brandon tried to deny it, saying I was crazy or jealous or I don't know what shit. But I just looked at Alexis, who was sitting in the third row with the other guests, and she had a pale face and huge eyes, and that was enough confirmation for everyone. Grace took off her veil and threw the bouquet in Brandon's face, literally, and screamed that the wedding was canceled and he could go to hell. Then she looked at me and asked if I was sure about what I was saying, and I told her yes, that I was very sorry, but I thought she deserved to know before marrying someone who clearly didn't respect her. She nodded. I think she was in shock, and then she ran off the altar with her bridesmaids following her. I took off the boutonniere from my suit, left it on the officiant's chair, and walked down the center aisle while everyone looked at me with their mouths open, some with horror, others with something that looked like respect or admiration. I don't know. I left the hotel, got in my car, and drove straight to my parents' house, which was like 30 minutes from there. My phone started ringing immediately, calls and messages from Brandon, from Alexis, from the rest of the group, but I didn't answer any. I turned off my phone and sat in my old childhood room that my parents had converted into an office but still had, my bed, and I just stayed there, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I'd just done. Part of me felt bad for Grace. She didn't deserve to have her wedding ruined like that, but another part of me knew I did the right thing, that she deserved to know the truth before committing her life to someone who was going to cheat on her. My parents arrived like an hour later. They'd been at the wedding as guests and had seen all the drama. My mom was worried, asking if I was okay, if I needed anything, and I told her everything, about Alexis and Brandon, about the group knowing and not telling me anything, about feeling like the biggest idiot in the world. My dad, who's normally a man of few words, just said, "You did well, son. That guy wasn't your friend, and that girl didn't deserve you." And for some reason, those simple words made me feel a little better, although I still felt devastated and empty inside. I spent the next 3 days at my parents' house, ignoring all calls and messages. I had like 200 unread messages, most from Alexis begging me to talk, some from Brandon trying to explain himself, others from the group saying I'd overreacted or that I'd ruined everything. Finally, on the 4th day, I decided to go back to my apartment to get my things, because obviously I couldn't keep living with Alexis after what had happened. I arrived when I knew she'd be at work. I put all my clothes and important things in suitcases and boxes, and I was about to leave when she arrived. Apparently, she'd skipped work to wait for me. She tried to talk to me, saying she was so sorry, that it had been a mistake, that she loved me and not Brandon, that everything had been confusion and we could get through it if I gave her a chance. I looked at her and felt absolutely nothing, like I was looking at a stranger, and I told her to go to hell, that she'd cheated on me with my best friend for over a year while we talked about getting married and having a life together, and there was nothing she could say or do that would fix that. She started crying and saying that I'd ruined her life, that because of me, Brandon hated her now and blamed her for ruining his wedding, that the whole group was avoiding her. And I told her good, that she should feel a little of what I felt when I discovered everyone had betrayed me. I moved back in with my parents temporarily while looking for my own place. I blocked Alexis and Brandon on everything, phone, social media, email, everything. But I didn't block the rest of the group yet. because I'd decided that everyone who knew about the affair and didn't tell me anything was going to pay too. I know it sounds vengeful and maybe sick, but the truth is I didn't care. They'd chosen to laugh at me behind my back and protect Brandon and Alexis instead of telling me the truth. So they deserved consequences too. I started with Eric. I remembered that once, when he was drunk, he'd told me he sold client lead information from his company to a competitor for extra money, basically stealing intellectual property from his company and selling it. At the time I thought it was just drunk talk and bragging, but I decided to investigate a little. I used some contacts I have in the industry. The benefit of being in office supplies is, people in many companies, and confirmed that Eric was really doing this. He had a pretty elaborate scheme where he'd copy information from his company's database and sell it monthly. I took a screenshot of a Facebook conversation where Eric had mentioned this to me in a message when he was drunk like 2 years ago. Sent it anonymously to his company's compliance department, along with some specific details about dates and amounts, and 3 weeks later, Eric was fired and threatened with legal action. I heard through the grapevine. He's working at a call center now, making like a third of what he used to make. Then it was Rebecca's turn. Her food blog had grown quite a bit and was starting to receive free products from restaurants and brands to review. What many people didn't know is that Rebecca literally wrote fake reviews for money. She charged restaurants to write positive reviews without even visiting the places sometimes. Basically, it was fraud and total journalistic ethics violation. I knew this because she'd once told me about it like it was something funny or clever, not realizing it was basically destroying her readers' trust. I created an anonymous email account and started sending evidence of this to the brands Rebecca worked with, to some restaurants that had been her victims, and to a couple of bigger food bloggers in the area who had influence. Within 2 months, Rebecca's reputation was destroyed. She lost all her contracts with brands, and her blog basically died because people stopped trusting her reviews. Last time I checked, she was working at a retail clothing store. Christina was easier than I expected. She worked as a marketing consultant and always bragged about her college degree and experience, but turns out her degree was fake. Well, not completely fake. She'd gone to college but never finished her last year. She simply dropped out and then created a fake diploma that she used on her resume and LinkedIn profile. I knew this because once at a college party, she was drunk and crying about how she'd dropped out of school and how her parents didn't know. And at the time, we were all supportive and told her it didn't matter. But now I had that information and I was going to use it. I anonymously contacted her biggest client, a medium-sized company that paid her very well for consulting services, and suggested they verify her academic credentials. The company did a proper background check, discovered the fraud, fired her immediately, and also demanded she return part of the money they'd paid her because she'd obtained the contract under false pretenses. Her consulting career was basically over, because in that industry, reputation is everything. For the other friends in the group who also knew about the affair but weren't as close, or I didn't have compromising information about them, I found small ways to make their lives a little harder. Nothing illegal or too dramatic, but things like leaving honest but negative reviews about their businesses when they genuinely had bad service, not inviting them to networking events. I organized through my father's business, those kinds of small things that add up over time. Some might say I went too far, that I became obsessed with revenge, and maybe they're right. About 6 months after all this, I'm finally in a better place. I moved to my own apartment, a small but nice one near my father's office. I started therapy because obviously I had shit to process about trust and relationships, and I blocked everyone who was involved in that whole situation. Alexis tried to contact me a couple more times through phone numbers. I didn't have blocked or new social media profiles, but I never responded, and eventually she gave up. I heard through the grapevine that she and Brandon tried to have a real relationship after everything exploded, but apparently it didn't work out because, without the element of secrecy and betrayal, there was nothing real between them, just guilt and mutual resentment. Grace, by the way, sent me a message like 3 months after the canceled wedding thanking me for saving her from making the biggest mistake of her life. She said at first she hated me for ruining her special day, but after processing everything she realized I'd done her a huge favor, that I'd discovered who Brandon really was before she married him, and not after. She told me she'd met someone new, someone who really valued her, and that she was happy. That made me feel good, feel like at least something good had come out of that whole mess. Am I happy now? I don't know if happy is the right word. I'm at peace, I guess, or at least more at peace than I was 6 months ago. I don't think about Alexis or Brandon all the time anymore. I don't feel that burning rage in my chest every time I remember what they did. It still hurts when I think about the 8 years I wasted with someone who didn't respect me enough to be honest with me. About all the times I proposed marriage and she rejected me, probably because she was confused between Brandon and me. About all the nights I wondered what I was doing wrong in our relationship, when actually, the problem was never me. I've been on a couple of dates in the last few months. Nothing serious yet because honestly, I'm not ready to trust someone that way again. But it's good to know there's life after all this. That not all people are liars and traitors like my supposed best friends turned out to be. My father's business is doing well. In fact, I just closed a big contract with a new chain of offices in the area, and that makes me feel productive and useful, like I have a purpose, beyond just existing and dealing with my pain. Sometimes I wonder if I should have handled it differently. If maybe I should have just left silently and let everyone continue with their lives without causing so much drama and destruction. But then I remember Eric's face laughing while making that comment about Brandon and Alexis, the way they all treated me like I was too stupid to notice what was happening right in front of me. And I know I did what I had to do. I didn't owe them anything, not after what they did to me. And if their lives are a little more screwed up now because of the consequences of their own actions, well, that's not my problem. The last time I heard anything about Brandon was like 2 months ago when his mom, who was always very kind to me during all those years, called to apologize for what her son had done. She told me she was ashamed of him, that she'd raised him better than that, and that she completely understood why I'd done what I did at the wedding. She told me Brandon had lost several friends after everything came to light, that his reputation at work had suffered because the story had spread in his professional circle, and that he was seeing a therapist to work on his character issues. I thanked her for calling, but told her I had no interest in knowing about Brandon or having any kind of relationship with him in the future, that chapter of my life was permanently closed. I guess the biggest lesson I learned from all this is that the people you think you know best can surprise you in the worst possible ways, and that loyalty and honesty are much rarer than you think. I also learned that it's okay to stand up for yourself, even if that means destroying relationships or causing drama, because at the end of the day, you're the only one who has to live with the consequences of letting people walk all over you. I don't regret exposing Brandon and Alexis in front of everyone at that wedding. I don't regret taking revenge against the friends who laughed at me behind my back, and I definitely don't regret slamming the door in Alexis's face when she came begging me to give her another chance. I'm building a new life now. One without toxic people who laugh at my pain, without supposed friends who keep devastating secrets just to avoid discomfort, without a partner who lies to me every day while we plan a future together. It's lonely sometimes. I'm not going to lie. There are nights when I miss having a close group of friends to hang out with or a partner to share my day with, but then I remember that what I had before wasn't real anyway. It was just an illusion of connection while everyone betrayed me. And I'd rather be alone 1,000 times than be surrounded by snakes, pretending to be my friends. If there's one thing I want people to understand from this story, it's that you don't have to stay quiet when people hurt you, just because society says revenge is wrong, or that you should be the bigger person. Sometimes, people need to face the consequences of their actions, and if that means their lives get a little complicated because their own dirty secrets come to light, well, maybe they should have thought about that before being horrible people. I slept well every night after what I did, because I know each of them deserved it for the role they played in keeping me in the dark, while everyone had fun at my expense. Life goes on, I guess. I'm 31 years old. I have a good job, a decent relationship with my family, and the possibility of starting over without all the toxic baggage I carried for 8 years. I don't know what the future holds for me in terms of love or friendship, but I know that next time I'm going to be much more careful about who I let into my life, and that the first signs of dishonesty or lack of loyalty are going to be a hard no. I learned this lesson the most painful way possible, but at least I learned it, and that has to count for something.